Welcome everyone, and hello from Tempe and the Arizona Heritage Center Museum. My name is Jennifer Mary, and I'm an archivist and a public historian here at our Tempe Library and Archives. And I'm really excited to tell you about our program tonight, An Artist's Eye to History, a conversation with Katharine McKenna. And I'll give a little bit of background. Katharine McKenna is an accomplished artist, photographer, and author. She is the daughter of Malcolm and Priscilla McKenna, and her travels with her renowned paleontologist father are the subject of her new memoir, The Paleontologist's Daughter, which is something that I'm really looking forward to reading. But here tonight to share Katharine with us is our very own executive director, James Burns. And Dr. Burns will be speaking with Katharine McKenna tonight on her new book and all of her upcoming books.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have a little bit more, Jennifer, or are we?
Yeah, I was just gonna tell everyone a little bit about AHS in case if people weren't familiar with us. Just a little bit about our background. We were established in 1864, and we are the oldest historical agency in Arizona. We have 4 different locations. You can visit museums in all of the locations on your screen. And our mission is connecting people through the power of Arizona's history, which is exactly what we're doing tonight with this program. One of the things you can do to support us is to purchase our new license plate, which I don't know why anyone wouldn't be proud to have this on their vehicle because it's absolutely gorgeous. Show off our Arizona monsoon season. Also, if you weren't aware, we are now open. Our 2 flagship museums in Tucson and Tempe are available Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can go to our website and purchase tickets and come see us because we have exhibits such as these. In Tucson, we have the Barry Goldwater exhibit, and you may not know that Barry Goldwater was more than just an Arizona senator and a native son. He also was an avid ham radio aficionado. We have his setup in Tucson, and you're gonna wanna come check out the Barry Goldwater K7 UGA. Also in Tempe at the Heritage Center, we have the Thomas Breeze Marcus Current State exhibit. And Thomas Breeze Marcus is also a native of Arizona, an amazing artist. And you can see some of his work on the screen here, but you definitely want to come in and check out the rest of it. Virtually, we have some programs such as the one tonight. And coming up in November, we have Dr. Lydia Otero, the author of In the Shadows of the Freeway, Growing Up Brown and Queer. She is also a native Arizonan, and I'm looking forward to hearing her speak about her book. You can go to our website to register for this event and others coming up. We'll have more in December coming soon. But one of the best ways to get more of this content is to become a member. Becoming a member gives you the chance to support our organization, support our mission, and gives us the ability to provide more programming like this. You get unlimited free admission to our museums. You get a discount in all of our gift shops. And most importantly, you get a subscription to the Journal of Arizona History, which is our quarterly journal with award-winning stories, authors, and a lot of Arizona history you aren't going to get anywhere else. So you can go to our membership website, which you see on your screen, or you can go to our main website to find all of this information and more, and to learn more about our upcoming programs. And without further ado, I'm going to close my screen out and turn it over to you, Dr. Burns.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to participate in a conversation with an author and artist, Katharine McKenna, who I've known, I don't want to admit how many years, Katharine. You have followed me through my career, I think, at 5 different museums now. So it's been a long time, and it's been a thrill to see your career progress. And I'm really excited to talk to you tonight about some stories that the public doesn't generally get to experience.
Right.
We're here to talk about your newest book, that was published about a year ago, and one that's going to be coming out here in the next few months. They're the latest feather in your artist cap, building upon your work as a painter and a photographer over many years. Um, I was wondering if you might start out by telling us a little bit about how you first got interested in art and how your upbringing influenced your future career as an artist and an author.
Well, I know distinctly when it started. I was in first grade, and I had this teacher who was a beatnik, and she taught us uh, about Paul Klee and Kandinsky, and she that's what I thought school was about. Actually, the school was about art, and so I was very disappointed when second grade came around and I had to learn to read and write. I really literally thought that school was about making art. So it really sunk into me early on. But then I had to get educated. So I kind of lost touch with that part of me, the artist part of me, until I got into high school when I started taking photographs. And I had, I had my own darkroom and I started developing pictures, and that was kind of my visual outlet that way, my visual creative outlet. So I really loved photography and carried it on into college. And as you can see here, these are some of the photographs that I took on the Navajo reservation when I was up working up there. But the art part stayed kind of hidden inside of me for quite a while until I wound up in art school later and got my degree in industrial design from Pratt Institute, a master's. And it was there that I touched base again with painting. So that's when I was able to pull it back together again.
Fascinating. Who do you consider the most important influences on your life? Maybe teachers, family, other authors or artists?
I would say all of the above, really. I mean, my father was a huge influence on me. Just his attitude and the way he conducted himself. And he was a scientist, and you know, the arts and sciences are close in the way that the philosophy of how they, what the way you think in a way. And so, but also books are definitely, you know, I remember Ibsen, reading Ibsen's A Doll's House, and that really struck me early on. Um, and uh, and then I said, what else did I say here? The Vincent Van Gogh, for instance, I used to study his paintings when I was a child very closely and just think like, I could do that, you know, I could do that. And O'Keeffe and Cezanne and Kandinsky, all of those, the Fauvists are very much part of my favorite painters, and I really look up to them.
I know that folks are very interested in hearing, particularly about your adventures on the Navajo reservation in the late 1970s, which will be the focus of the exhibition of your work that we're bringing to the Arizona Heritage Center this coming spring. And also, folks are excited to hear about your book, The Paleontologist's Daughter. So we'll dive right into that next.
Okay.
I'm hoping you'll share with us some remembrances of your childhood and how those remembrances inspired you to write The Paleontologist's Daughter.
Well, my childhood I thought was perfectly normal. It turns out really was not. um, I had three brothers, and our life, for instance, we lived in New Jersey, but as soon as summer came, we would jump into our Land Rover, which no one had ever seen a Land Rover in New Jersey before, in the 60s. And we would drive to Colorado and Wyoming and start to look for dinosaurs and fossils and camp out under the stars in the most remote places, and all over Wyoming. And it was, you know, it wasn't for the faint of heart, really. We slept out under the stars. We were met up with bears and rattlesnakes and outlaws, and but we thought this was perfectly normal. And we didn't go to summer camp, you know, like all the other kids. We were already out there in the middle of nowhere camping out. So it was very very unusual. And we we were allowed to go into the museum, sometimes the Museum of Natural History in New York, and we were given passes that allowed us to go from the basement to the attic. And this was something that we cherished, the ability to go all over, to roam all over the museum. And we were never tourists. We were sort of in it from the inside out. And we always had that feeling that we were doing something else other than just being a tourist. So it was the way I was brought up. And I learned to just sleep on the ground, and it just was never a problem.
You've given us a lot of teasers in there. I can't help but dig into that a little bit. So
read the book.
you mentioned outlaws.
Oh yeah.
And this wasn't the 1880s. You're talking about the 1960s and 1970s.
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
I think it was well, we were near Jackson. We were camped up on the Continental Divide, and we had gone to town and gone to the post office to pick up our general delivery mail. And there were pictures on the wall, most wanted pictures, you know. And so then later in the week, we were back up, you know, after getting our supplies, back up at the Continental Divide. And these guys rode through on their horseback, and they looked at us like, and what are you doing here? You know, and we looked at them like, well, what are you doing here? And my mom recognized them, that they were the same faces that were at the post office, but she was terrified that one of her kids was going to say, hey mom, that's the same guy we saw at the post office. But we didn't give it away. So then Dave Love, who I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Love, but he mapped the entire state of Wyoming. He was a geologist. And there's a book called Rising from the Plain by John Mcphee. It's all about him, about his life. I think he went back down and told the sheriff, and then he told them exactly where they were going to come out on the other side of the divide. And sure enough, they came out exactly where he said they were, because he knew the land so well, and they were arrested.
Wow.
Yeah.
So instead of summer camp, you got to help dig for fossils.
Yes. We were trained very early on to find fossils on the ground, even the smallest little glint, and it could lead to a whole bone that was buried underground. So we were trained very early on, and we had sharp little eyes. We could find them almost as well as my dad could. So and that talent has stuck with me over the years. I have found so much jewelry on the streets of New York, just earrings and watches and all the time. Just the other week, I found a necklace on the street. Just because my eye picks up on that little sheen. I once found a diamond ring at midnight in Boulder, Colorado, on the street.
Wow.
I don't know how I do it, but I just do.
I'm wondering if the training you received from your dad in paleontology, that ability to really focus on detail and have a good eye, surely that played some role in your ability as an artist.
Absolutely. I think I see things very sharply and very, you know, the detail. And even my photography in a way is a precursor to the paintings in a way because of its composition. And so it definitely has a lot to do with that, and drawing and all the work that I've done when I worked at the Ford Museum and, you know, on automobiles, and just a lot of details that go into it. And I think that the visual, it's all about being having the visual acuity.
Mhm. So for those of us who have spent our life around museums, particularly those of us who have worked in museums our whole life, the name Malcolm McKenna is renowned. When you were growing up, did you have an understanding of your father's preeminence in the field of paleontology? And what was it like to have him as a dad?
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We were aware that he was well known. We were, so he was, I kind of call him as the outdoor dad. He has two personalities, the outdoor dad and the indoor dad. And the indoor dad was the guy who came home after traveling on the West Side Highway for an hour, going 8 miles, you know, to get home, and really the stress of that and the stress of New York. And then at night he would write his papers, and we all had to be sort of quiet around him because it was his work was very important. So why he had to sit down right in the middle of the living room where everybody had to practice piano and do their homework is another question. But then the outdoor dad was the one that where he was really in his element. He loved field work. That was his life. He just loved going out in the field. He would relax and build a campfire and sit around and have the scotch, and everyone's swap stories and into the night, and outside camping. He loved crawling around on the ground looking for fossils. So that was when he was in his element, and that's the side of him that I really connected to.
You mentioned, I can't even imagine what this is like, being able to go from the basement to the attic of the Museum of Natural History in New York. Tell us about some of your memories of the nooks and crannies, your favorite things.
Oh, well, the basement was very interesting because there was a lot of stuff down there that was just thrown here and there, like old Mayan temple parts, and I don't know, just a lot of different stuff down in the basement. And then the attic was really in the turrets of the museum. And there were all kinds of cases of stuff up there, and Margaret Mead was down in another turret on the other side. And I used to go up the elevator with her. And then the other part about it that was so intriguing and so fun was that we felt so privileged because the public wasn't allowed to go to the 5th floor, just, you know, the scientists and us. So
For
but it
audience,
really
for
made
audience,
me feel kind of, there's a secret door that is by the big sequoia slab that was the secret door to the Frick building that was built inside the museum. Nobody could really see it from the outside, from the avenues, but it was built there to house the Frick collection of fossils. And so there was a secret door that was right by the big sequoia slab. And you'd call ahead, and then my dad would come down and like open the door, and you'd like sneak into this area and that the public wasn't allowed in. So it was always kind of an adventure that way.
for audience members who might not be familiar, would you tell us a little bit about who Margaret Mead was?
Margaret Mead was a very famous anthropologist, and she studied the Samoans, I believe, and she was very famous anthropologist, and she,
As I recall, one of the first female anthropologists.
yes, the female anthropologist. And yeah, and we were pretty young when she was around, but I know she had a cane. She had a cane and she tapped it as she walked along.
So, thanks to your dad's love of field work, you had an opportunity to travel the world. You went to a lot of exotic places, and you share some of those remembrances in the book. Would
Mhm.
you pick two or three of those and tell us a little bit about those experiences?
Sure. Well, I would say the most exotic place was Easter Island. And we went there in 1970, I think, or 70, 71 maybe. And that was very exotic. It was there's only one jet a week that went there,
This is
and
boring.
so um,
Oh, we've been,
that, there that's where all the big headstones are, um, and we stayed in a little house with the family. There were no hotels on the island, so we traveled all over the island and saw the quarry where these big stones were carved out. So that was really a very interesting trip that we took. It's 2,000 miles off the coast of Chile. So it's like flying from New York to Denver. And then we went to the Galapagos Islands also in the 70s, and we traveled on a big schooner with 10 crew members and 10 of us as passengers, and toured all the islands with all the different animals and learned about Darwin. And where else? I've been to Mayan temples. That was later. I did that on my own. So yeah, we had a wonderful time on those trips.
You know, it sounds like what every typical 14, 15-year-old does on their summer vacation.
Yeah.
So, so even at the time, you realized that it was pretty extraordinary, the experiences you were having.
Yes, it was not usual. The kids in my class used to, I want to know what I was up to when I was in high school. What was our family going to do next?
Did you go to public high school?
No, I went to a private school, um, Dwight Englewood in Englewood, New Jersey.
You discovered some things yourself as a child on the digs with your dad. Would you tell us the story about the first discovery you ever made as a child?
Sure. Well, we stopped to look for fossils near Togatee Pass, and I just wandered off by myself and had that vision, like something shiny, and I found a dinosaur tooth. And so then I ran back to my dad. I was about 11, I think. And I said, "Look what I found." And he said, "Where did you find that?" And so everybody went running over there hoping to find the rest of the skeleton or the skull or jaw or anything. But they didn't find it. And so then he said that he wanted to call it something. So he said he was going to call it Catherine's locality. So it's on the map, the place
And
where I
that's in
found
Wyoming.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Were you ever in any, besides outlaws, were you ever in any dangerous situations on these digs?
Yeah, I mean, we had to watch out for rattlesnakes all the time. Sometimes we'd be camping out in old homestead houses that were like mice haven, and that meant there's snakes most likely were there. And we've had bears come in and try to swipe our food and soap and stuff like that. Um, in general, we were pretty safe. I mean, my dad was very careful. So we would get stuck sometimes in our vehicles, like stuck farther away from civilization than we would otherwise have gotten stuck because of the four-wheel drive. And so that would be kind of a problematic, but we'd always find a way to get it unstuck. So
Um, so what role do you think your sense of adventure and exploration plays in your writing?
I think that uh, just writing it down was, I'd never written a book before, really. I'd kept journals, but this was a real adventure. It was writing this book and digging into the past and remembering things and researching and discovering things like about Andrew Carnegie that I didn't really know about, that he was into dinosaurs too. And he was he's related. He was my great grandmother's first cousin. So it was just interesting to me that was there, and I didn't know it. So it was a lot of research and researching all the different characters that I'd come across or that were had influenced, say, like George Gaylord Simpson and what his role was in my father getting the job at the Museum of Natural History. And I worked with an editor, and she was incredible. She's a great editor. So that was an experience.
What made you just say one day, I'm going to put down my paintbrush and I'm going to pick up a pen or a keyboard?
Well, I had been writing this book in my head for about 10 years, and I just kept saying, don't do that, because I had this superstition that if I thought it in my head that I would never remember it later. So I just kept putting it off, and I kept putting it off. And then one day I was thinking about the title, and then a subtitle came in to my mind, and then suddenly it clicked, and I just started writing from the very beginning. Actually wrote all the way up to 40 years old, but so there's a whole second part. But the editor kind of helped me gather it together and make it into a story. So she just wanted to concentrate on the adventures and the exotic places and the discoveries, and keep it out west. And so that turned it into a story, a readable story, I think.
Mm-hmm. You, some of the critical acclaim that the book has received, one of the critics mentioned that you have a fascination with, quote, the hidden. Can you tell us a little bit about that fascination and how that plays out maybe in your artwork?
Sure. Well, when something's hidden, it's hidden until it's discovered. And then discovery leads to curiosity. And then curiosity leads to education. So it's kind of, it's more about, being a curious person. And I've always been a curious person. I think my dad was a very curious person as well. So uncovering things is something that I really enjoy doing, from doing a crossword puzzle to finding, a fossil in the ground, or in my artwork. Definitely I never know how my paintings are going to come out. I don't paint the same painting over and over again. So it's always an adventure when I paint. And that means that my paintings, each painting is very unique and has its own personality and its own voice. And so, but I never know how they're going to come out when I start painting. So for me, that's actually, I find that part of the creative process, that it's almost more important than the final product. It's more about process for me. And it's sort of hard to describe the feeling, but it's about exploring different things, like exploring different colors and shape, and then allowing the painting to kind of develop on its own, but you're sort of part of that process, and you're actually facilitating that, but it does take on its own personality, and it's almost like a child or something. You know, you sort of create it, but it becomes its own person.
Shelley, this might be a great opportunity so that folks at home can see some of Katharine's artwork as well, to post the link to Katharine's website in the chat box, and you can follow along at home. You've taken a number of river trips, both on the Green and the Colorado River. Can you tell us about one of the most memorable?
Yes. The most memorable, I think, well, they were both memorable. I've been down the Colorado River twice. So the first one was in 1969 with the Powell Centennial expedition with Gaylord Stavely. And we went down the river in these wooden cataract boats. And then it was quite an experience. I was in a boat that flipped, and it kind of did a number on me psychologically. But the second time we went down was in 1973, and we had wooden dories that my father had bought. And the dories were just absolutely beautiful. The lines on them and the way they float down, and it's quiet and silent, and they have oars, so you could really hear the canyon. It was really, that part was just a very incredible experience. And we were on the river for a month because it was a private permit. And we had a few accidents in a couple of rapids that scared the life out of me, but we managed to get through. And very memorable, very exciting, and a little scary, all of it, all at once, and quite beautiful too.
Any famous people on that trip with you? Because I know your life has been surrounded by
Any
famous people.
let's see, who did we have? Well, Byron Bell, he's an architect in New York, was on the first part of that trip. He missed the whole second part, but we didn't have any. There was a composer who was, or a conductor, Hal France. I don't know if he's famous, but he ended up being a conductor, musician. Who else was there was another scientist, Barbara Waters, and a doctor went down with my dad, Councilman Morgan, and he helped save a kid's life because the kid got bit by a rattlesnake, and he knew how to calmly read the instructions and apply the anti-venom to this kid. So there were a lot of things like that. It's a serious place, the Grand Canyon. It's not a water park.
Let's move on to talk about Flagstaff and the Navajo Reservation and the Museum of Northern Arizona, which is really the focus of the photography that folks are seeing on the screen, and also of the exhibition that we'll be bringing to the Heritage Center. So what inspired you to journey to Flagstaff all by yourself at age 19 to pursue an internship with the Museum of Northern Arizona?
Well, I was a little disillusioned with college, and I'd been fresh sophomore and freshman year under my belt, and I just felt like I left college to go get an education. So I just didn't feel like I was getting the right kind of education where I was. And so I tried to think of what to do with myself. And I had thought about maybe working at Williamsburg. I'd been there once when I was a kid. And then I had worked briefly at Mystic Seaport Museum, and I liked that a lot. And then I just, one day, the Museum of Northern Arizona popped in my mind because I had been there when I was about 12. And I just remembered it. And I remembered Willie Coyne. Do you remember Willie? Did you meet Willie?
Yes.
Yeah, he came into my mind. He was a Hopi guy who worked there, and so I just called them up and said I wanted to come out and volunteer for them, as long as it was for the anthropology department. I was interested in anthropology from probably Easter Island and Mexico, and so they said that they didn't take students in the winter, and I told them that I was not a student. That they had to take me. I just wanted to just do whatever they wanted me to do. I would do it. So they said, okay. And that's how I got to the Museum of Northern Arizona. So at first I worked for the anthropology department doing mitigation surveys, and because they found out that I could find things on the ground. And I didn't tell anyone who my dad was. I just wanted to be there for myself. And so I ended up going out on these mitigation surveys and finding arrowheads and pottery shards and scrapers and that kind of stuff. And then one day I heard about the Hopi and Navajo shows across the street at the exhibition in the museum part. And then I was hooked when I went over there. I just fell in love with everything, with the rugs and the Hopi kachinas, and that show was just incredible. And I learned so much, and I just loved it. So then it wasn't long before we had to do the Navajo collecting trip for the Navajo show. And I said, can I go along? I want to help, you know? So then sure enough, I went on that trip, and it was the biggest adventure I think I've ever been on. It was up there on the Navajo reservation. It's just at that time, it felt so remote and distant and so far away from civilization, and it felt like a foreign country almost. And so it was very interesting to me. And we probably covered about 600 miles of dirt road in 5 days, crisscrossing the reservation, going to these old trading posts that were where we would pick up the rugs and the blankets and the baskets and the weavings. And so it was really just an amazing place, and it reminded me a lot of Wyoming. So it was very familiar in some ways. And we would camp out. We camped out on the reservation. We'd find some little road that didn't look like it'd been driven on for a while, and just go and camp out under the stars. So it was really just truly a very interesting trip. Just loved it. And I especially loved Navajo Mountain because it was a dirt road that was 40 miles of road that was almost like snow and ice. It was a sandy, but it acted like snow and ice. You had to rev through it and then come to a screeching halt and crawl over bedrock and then start up again. And it's 40 miles of this. And finally you get up to this incredible mountain. And that's where Madeline Cameron was with her trading post there. This is a picture of Navajo Mountain.
And what was going on there in that image?
It was called Pioneer Day, and they had races and tug of wars and rewards and prizes for everyone, and horse racing, bareback riding. It was called Pioneer Day.
Did you make any friendships on that trip that have been enduring to this day?
Yes, my been on that trip with a couple people that I still in contact with. Jessica Richmond, whose husband worked there as a biologist, and then Gail Vogt also went on a little bit of this trip with me. Bob Brunig was there, and a couple other people that are museum oriented that were at the museum.
Our Flagstaff audience members and those who some are up in the high country may find some of those names familiar. So then were you involved in actually implementing the Navajo Craftsman Show after you brought everything back from the collecting trip?
Yes, I was kind of in charge of organizing everything, putting they had to be judged. All the arts and crafts had to be judged. And so they had to be placed in the categories. So that was one of the jobs that I did. I also had to label them and then get the prices on them properly. And then when opening night came, I would be not the salesperson, but the person who made sure that the piece was sold and sold to the right person. So it was an intense job that took 15 minutes. It was all the special exhibits room would be filled with the prize winners, and then all the people would come in and buy them up in 15 minutes. It was all that had to be kept track of. So it was an all around, I saw it from one end to the other, from collecting up on the reservation and then down to the sales part.
Wow. And so you were there during a very interesting time at the museum, a transition between directors, longtime director, Dr. Ned Danson, and his rather famous son who kind of grew up at the museum.
Right.
Did you have an opportunity to meet any of them?
I knew Ned. I'd been to a party at his house, and he was still around when I was there. But I didn't know him that well. I knew Bob Brunig more, and I knew Herman Bleibtreu, and he was the director the following year when I came back. I don't know how long Herman was there. But then my father, Herman asked me if my father would be interested in being on the board. So I called my dad, said, "Hey, I think I got you a job."
So this is, you read my mind. I was just going to ask you about this. So there you are working in the anthropology department, flying under the radar. Nobody knows who your dad is.
Right.
How did that information come to light?
I don't really know. There was one day when Herman called me into his office and he closed the door, and I thought, oh, what have I done? I've done something terrible. It felt like I was in the principal's office, and he goes, "How is it that you could be here for 6 months and no one knows who your dad is?" I did it on purpose because I didn't want to be known for my dad. I wanted to be known for me. I was old enough to be known for me now. But no.
And did you live at the museum?
No, I lived in a little apartment. I lived in a little apartment down on Humphrey Street that was shared with a Serbian gypsy, and the palm reader. Maybe she's still there. I don't know. But I had the back room. I just had one room I rented. It was $175 a month, and she was in the front part, so she was interesting too.
All of our Flagstaff audience members are probably thinking, you can't rent a closet in Flagstaff for $175 a month. I thought you were going to tell us a wonderful tale about living in the converted chicken coops that the interns live in these days.
No, I think I started off in one of those, and I decided that I needed to get my own place, So I did spend about a week at the museum.
So having studied the Navajo and Hopi craftsman shows and the history of M&A for a couple decades plus now, I'm aware that there are a lot of hardships involved in those collecting trips. Some of that collecting is done during times of the year where the weather can be quite inclement and you're traveling these unpaved roads. What do you have any remembrances of that?
Oh yeah, we would literally have to race thunderstorms because if you get caught in one of them, the roads turn to complete mud or you know arroyos or overflowing or whatever. But yeah, so and then we'd have these rugs, $80,000 worth of wool in the back seat, and they couldn't get wet. So we would like race these thunderstorms from one trading post to the next. And yeah, it was, and sometimes we didn't really have a map. This is all before we had a map, but sometimes these roads were not on the map. And this is all before Google Maps and all that. We just figured, well, it's that direction. One time they told us we wanted to get to, I think it was Denebito from Pinion, maybe. And they said, just follow the bionic yabaches. And I'm like, what are the bionic yabaches? Those are the big wires, you know, the electrical towers that go across there. So we just, okay, we'll just follow the bionic yabaches and we'll get to Pinion.
And you got home.
Yep. Yep.
I've just got a couple more questions and then we'll go ahead and switch over to Q&A format. So audience members who have been saving up questions, please do start typing those into the chat and the staff will help us field those questions. Katharine, what do you consider the major accomplishments of your career?
Well, I think my painting has been a major accomplishment. Kind of worked from the ground up, and I ended up on the cover of Southwest Magazine, which I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. One of my paintings, and also this book is a major accomplishment, I think, as well. People are really enjoying reading it. I've been getting a lot of good feedback about it, and people who thought they knew me didn't really know this part of my life, and they were very complimentary about it. But I think there's a lot of different things I've done in my life, but I think the painting is my most the one that rings true for me.
And you've been included in some group and solo exhibitions here in Arizona. Would you touch on a few of the highlights?
Oh yes, well, of course, there's the Cowgirl Up, which I was in that show for 3 years, and that was a blast. I loved that. It was so fun. And then I've showed at the Museum of Northern Arizona with two other artists who are Western painters, and then now there's this show. So I've shown in Wyoming and New York and a lot of the museums, the Booth Museum in Georgia, and that's where I met you. And I'm in, I think, 5 different museum collections, permanent collections at this point. So
before we go to Q&A, I want to just highlight the new book that you have coming out. So the Paleontologist Daughter is already out there in print and available, but give us a sneak peek at the new book that you have coming out,
okay,
which will relate to our exhibition.
yes, this actually is meant for the exhibition, and it's just called Navajo Collecting Trip, a journal into the remote. So this book is written from a 19-year-old's point of view perspective, and but there's some interesting stories in here about meeting Charles Lolema and Father Liebler, who was the the Episcopalian missionary up in Bluff, Utah. And that was a very interesting interaction that we had with him. And it's really the journal that I've kept all these years about doing these collecting trips up on the Navajo reservation, and where we went and which trading posts had which kind of rugs in it, and the people that were there, their names. It's a historical journal at this point, I think. And then it's illustrated with these photographs, that some of which you've seen here on the screen. So I wanted to document the Navajo reservation at that time, and with my camera and with my pen. So that's what this book is. So this is from the 19-year-old perspective, and then the memoir is from a 60-year-old's perspective, looking back at the 19-year-old.
Wow. All right. I see there's a few comments in chat. Jennifer Mary mentioned the quote, "Curiosity leads to education." I had actually written this down as well, Katharine. Discovery leads to curiosity, and curiosity leads to education. I think you may have just given us an antidote for what ails our society.
I think that's what my book is about, in a way, is allowing yourself to be curious. And with the media the way it is, it's like there's nothing to be discovered. It's already all there. But I'm sure there's ways that we can figure out how to do that.
Carolyn's wondering, who is the woman standing in the doorway? She asked, is that Madeline Dunn Cameron?
That is Madeline Cameron. Yes, that she was there when I was there, and I think she retired shortly after I stopped going up there. But years later, when I went up to paint the area, I went all the way up to Navajo Mountain, and I didn't recognize it. And they also paved that road, by the way. It's paved all the way up there. It took like half an hour, to get up there, 15 minutes. But so I went up there and I asked, where is the trading post? What happened to it? And they said, oh, you missed it. It's back by the charter house. So turned around, went back down, and then found it. And it was just a ruin, total ruin, like sand inside and outside of the house. It looked like an ancient Hopi, Anasazi ruin, So it was sad to see it gone like that.
So you have retraced some of your former travel.
Yeah, and after that, I went down to Shanto, and I wanted to go in there too, because I remember Shanto pretty well. And I walked in, and the owner came around, and I asked him, what happened to the Navajo Mountain trading post? And he said, oh, I went downhill. The guy bought it, and then it just went downhill, and that was it. And then things started to click in my brain, and I said, well, what about Inscription House? Is Alan Townsend still there? Is he still as cranky as he was back? I started rattling off everybody's name from back in the 70s of all these traders. And this guy, he finally stopped me. He said, wait a minute, wait, stop. Who are you? How do you know all these people's names from the 70s? So I had to explain to him what I did.
Shelley said, you have such a powerful experience traveling the Navajo reservation. Are there any other locations in Arizona that you'd like to experience that you haven't yet had a chance to see?
Well, I've been to Canyon de Chelly, and that place is really special. I would go back there in a heartbeat. I haven't been around Tucson very much, just once. And that would be interesting for me to see. And I love the Wickenburg area. I'm just there for the exhibitions, but I'd like to see more of that area. It's very deserty there. I'd like to go to the North Rim again. I've been there once, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, I love Arizona. I don't know why I don't live there.
Let's see. Helen would like to know when the new book will be available.
It will be available, I would say, well, at least certainly by the time of the exhibition, which is in April, right?
Yes.
So I think I'd like to have it available just a little bit before that. So maybe by February, which isn't really that far away. February or March. I still have to fix a few typos in it, so.
With regard to curiosity, Jennifer suggests ignoring the media and going and looking for things on the ground.
Yes. Very good.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? It's rare that we actually can time this almost to the minute. This is kind of perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then staff who have been monitoring the email accounts, have we had any questions emailed in? Okay. Well, then with that, I think I'll invite Jennifer back, and she's going to tell us a little bit about membership in the Arizona Historical Society, and then we'll wrap up for the evening.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Katharine.
Yes, thank you so much for coming, Katharine. This was wonderful. I really enjoyed hearing about it, and I know everyone else did as well. I don't have a whole lot more to say about membership other than we really appreciate all of our members. We love being able to bring programming like this to everyone, and the more that we can get more members and bring the words from our Historical Society out to the world would be wonderful. So again, our website is arizonahistoricalsociety.org, and you can find our membership page there. So I hope everyone decides to join us, and thank you. We have the link in there. Check the chat box also for Katharine's website, our website. Make sure you follow. Katharine, do you have social media too that we can?
Yeah, I have Facebook, and there is a Paleontologist Daughter page. So
Perfect.
right there. I put a lot more pictures up too that were not in the book.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Katharine, I so appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. I know it's getting late East Coast time. We hope that the pandemic will subside and you'll be able to join us in person at some point during the run of the exhibition. And
I definitely will.
And folks will have a chance to actually meet you as well. Everyone have a lovely evening, and thank you for attending the Arizona Historical Society's virtual programming. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.